Over this series, we've seen how military, political, and economic power made English the global language. After the Second World War, other factors came into play. English also became the main language for the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, NATO, and many other international organizations. English also became the language of music, fashion, cinema, TV, and so on. As an example, why did the Swedish band ABBA sing in English? I don't imagine they did this because they loved the language, but like loads of other artists, they sang in English because that way they could have a global appeal. It is also true that in many countries, English stands for modernity. However, even at the beginning of the 20th century, this was happening. One of Britain's greatest writers, Joseph Conrad, was Polish. He moved to England when he was young and wrote in English in a style that I'm sure is far better than most English mother tongue speakers could ever imagine, myself included. When once questioned about his Britishness by a particularly dim journalist, he replied, "I'm more British than you are. You are only British because you could not help it." He acquired Britishness. So English expanded enormously after the Second World War. It no longer depended on conquest or financial power, but also on the influence and the desire of other people to use it. Apart from international institutions, culture, and the media, entire business sectors have become dominated by English. Take the oil industry as an example, or aviation. Pilots and air traffic controllers the world over talk to each other in English, whatever their first language may be. Oh, and by the way, that was a really scary takeoff. Non English speaking countries have also invested heavily in English, and the language has gained even more momentum to the point that the old English speaking countries are gradually losing control of the language. When Britain left the European Union, there were a few people who imagined that English would lose its prime position within that organisation. In fact, this was always extremely unlikely. The majority of the member states, especially in Scandinavia and Eastern Europe, have invested so heavily in English over generations. Why would they throw away all this investment in time, money, and effort to start all over again with another language? With the arrival of internet, some people believed that English would become the only language of the world. In recent years, though, digital technology has started to push back. It has become much easier and cheaper to translate and interpret from one language to another. Not many years ago, I remember reading an article that said that simultaneous translation by computer was decades, if not 100 years away. We are already using this technology now, even if it's not perfect. It is often said that if somebody predicts that a technology is going to arrive next year, it'll probably arrive in a few decades' time, if ever. But if somebody says that the technology will never arrive or will not arrive for 100 years, it'll be with us next week. So, what's going to happen next? As Niels Bohr, the physicist, once said, prediction is very difficult, especially when you're predicting about the future. So, how do we make predictions about the future of the English language and the future of international communications? We cannot make any predictions without considering future technology, and we cannot do that without considering Moore's Law. Gordon Moore was the co founder and chairman of the Intel Corporation. In 1965, he proposed his law, which goes something like this: every microprocessor or chip, call it what you will double in capacity every year and the cost will halve. This has proved to be basically true up to now, and even if there are physical limits to these things, similar progress can be made in other areas. Exponential growth is incredibly fast and gets faster all the time. There is a well known story about its power. According to a legend, the inventor of chess gave the game as a gift to King Shirham, an Indian king. The king was so delighted that he offered him any reward as long as it sounded reasonable. The inventor took out his chessboard and said, "I'm a man of simple tastes. I don't need a grand reward. Can you put 1 grain of rice on the first square of this chessboard, 2 grains of rice on the second square, 4 on the third, and so on, doubling every time?" By the time they'd gone halfway through the chessboard, doubling on each square, the quantity of rice was already more than the kingdom had ever produced in its entire history. By the 64th square, the number of grains on the chessboard would have been 2 to the power of 63. And here is the number: more than 2 billion times as many as on the first half of the board. The king was quite dismayed by the result of this, and did what kings do in these circumstances: he had the inventor executed. There are two morals to this. One, exponential growth is very powerful, and two, avoid the company of kings. And if you cannot avoid the company of kings, don't try to be clever. Many people forget that there is an abyss between linear and exponential progress. Another thing that has speeded up the advance of technology is machine learning. We no longer have to teach machines to do tasks step by step. They learn by themselves, and they learn fast. So, the future of English is connected to our relationship with digital technology. Some people are skeptical about how far technology will impact upon English, but remember, it was thought that face recognition technology was impossible a little more than 20 years ago. Now it's routine. People from all over the world used to dictate letters to secretaries. Now I, like lots of other people, dictate text to my computer. We don't know where all this is going to go. We are entering a world where humanity and technology might even merge. So the answer to the question, what is the future of English? Will it continue to expand? Maybe, at least for a while. Will any other language take over? I doubt that very much. So what will happen? Well, that's anyone's guess. One thing is certain, however: the answer will surprise us all. Let's hope for the best. Bye for now.